Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to this week's Team Gravity Fight Night. It's the fourth one of 2015, and we got an amazing lineup for you guys. As always, this is sponsored by Hitbox TV. This is the streaming service you are watching this on right now. And you know what? If you're watching this through, Team Liquid, you are missing out on a lot of things, guys. It's embedded there, but there's a chat involved that you guys really should be a part of. It's a huge party here, better than any Super Bowl party you guys could have thought of joining this week. My name is Droopy. I'm one of the casters today. I'm here with Cybert. How are you doing, Cybert?
I'm doing pretty well. I spent most of yesterday moving, so I'm crossing my fingers that my internet doesn't randomly die today.
Well, let's all cross our fingers in hope of that. And of course, we also have our trusted observer friend Kieran here. He's going to be the guy controlling the cameras, doing the production, unsung hero always of the Fight Night streams. So,
Indeed.
yeah.
Best
Yeah,
observer in NA as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. So, all right. So, if you guys haven't had a chance to look at the lineup today, it's going to feature JonSnow versus Intense for the first best of 5. And we're going to get started immediately. I'm going to message the players here just to make sure they're ready.
Yep, we are running just a couple of minutes behind schedule, but we are still ahead of schedule of where we would have been normally starting, so I guess that's a plus.
Yeah, I mean, there have been some, scheduling differences due to, events that are going on in the StarCraft scene. And of course, if you're an American, you know about the American Football Championship, known as a Super Bowl. I'm a huge football fan myself. I don't know about you, Cybert or Kieran, but I just can't watch it. My team isn't there, and I couldn't enjoy it, so...
See, personally, I don't care very much about football, but I should, because the Seahawks are my hometown team.
Yeah. Oh, are they? Well,
they are.
You and I are not going to have very good chemistry this this fight night, I have to say. All right, so we have game number 1 starting off here. This is going to be between JonSnow and Intense. It's a TVZ. Let's take a look at this map here. Now, they decided what to play on through map vetoes. The winner of this series, which is a best of 5, will receive $10. And then, well, I guess some bragging rights to go along with it. So let's take a look at the first player here. It's going to be the Blue Zerg at the upper right-hand side of Catalina LE. This is the player representing Flipside Tactics. It is JonSnow.
And on the left side of the red Terran, as you just said, representing Psystorm Gaming, it is Intense.
Okay, so, I do know a few things about these players. They are from North America, in fact, the United States, to be exact. They are a couple of top GM players from NA. JonSnow most recently was on Solaris Gaming, but after that team folded, he was picked up by Flipside Tactics. And Intense, on the other hand, also... a new member of his team, Psystorm Gaming. He was formerly on the same team as our observer right here, which was IVD Gaming. And so both of these guys with their new homes are going to look to, try to, well, I guess put their name on the scene here. This might be a way for them to do it.
You always got the new kid on the block who some of the other guys on the team, maybe they've been on the team for a little bit longer than these guys. I know both of these teams are relatively new, so you're not necessarily going to have super old members on the team, but you've always got the new kid on the block who wants to prove himself, and this is an excellent way to do this. Yeah, I mean, it's not the same as winning IEM or something like that, but you still get that experience, you still get that money, and like you talked about a little bit earlier, those bragging rights.
Oh, yeah, and that's probably the biggest thing because, we have so many wonderful viewers here with us today. That's a lot of people being possibly able to witness what these two guys are able to do. And so when you're playing in front of that kind of a crowd, you kind of have to put on your best. So let's see what these players are up to. And Cyber, why don't you let us know what's going on here?
Well, from JonSnow, we did have that pool, that hatch before pool. And then from Intense, I'm not exactly sure what the timing was, but it was that relatively quick racks for the Reaper. And of course, in TVZ, lots of people still love their Reaper openings.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And this is one reason why we are having Intense doing an amazing scout as well as harassment. And until a Queen or Zergling comes out, we're going to see JonSnow having to pull drones here. Now, he hasn't lost one yet, but it's getting awfully close. And there is the first blood. You guys can imagine the Unreal Tournament announcer.
And he did get a second one just as JonSnow was trying to make it into a Spore Crawler. He wasn't quite fast enough. And of course, with Ling speed so far away, this Reaper, joined by his buddy, is going to have not too much trouble kiting away from those Lings. And I feel like it wasn't all that long ago that people were talking about how most Zergs will never lose a drone to the early Reaper. And then it's like, when Maru started killing drones in IEM, everyone was like, oh, okay, well, I guess you can kill drones.
Yeah, and we are seeing that happen here a little bit. But it looks like with the Lings out, JonSnow's going to have a better handle on the situation. But nonetheless, Intense is still just basically getting a grand tour of JonSnow's territory, taking a look at everything that's going on. And he is going to see that JonSnow's getting speed.
Yep.
And now he's going to back off.
And in addition to the Lings that are already out on the map, JonSnow was forced to make the additional 4 Lings, using up that larva, and he's going to be a little bit sad about that, but like you said, it was really nice timing by Intense. He ran in there, shot some drones up, shot up some Lings with his Reapers, got out just as speed was finishing, so no real opportunities for JonSnow to get back some of that value.
Yeah, well, this is going to be one time he's going to try to do that. I mean, you made all these units, got to do something with them. So he's going to push out here with these Lings, see if he can do some annoying stuff on the low ground of Intense's base. He's going to try to utilize those Reapers as best as he can to take them out. SCV's being pulled, one being taken out. Let's see if JonSnow can even up the worker kills count. And it looks like he will be about halfway there. But he's going to lose some Lings in the process.
Yeah, it is nice to grab those 3 workers. Unfortunately for JonSnow, Intense does have those mules on the way, or at least he can drop them down. But the Hellions are starting to pop out for Intense. He's going for that Reaper-Hellion combo that pretty much everyone loves doing at basically any early game TVZ.
Yeah, there's also a starport behind this as well, so we're going to see some Banshees out. Now, Intense is also playing very economical here. He's got that 3rd CC. He got it at around 5 minutes, so he is definitely going to macro off of this. This is not by any means a huge attack that he must do huge damage with, but of course he would like to.
Yeah, and he's also adding on that cloaked Banshee as well. Now, on the right side of the map, the Lings are trying to get the surround on those Reapers and the Hellions. A couple of more Hellions coming in for the reinforcement. They almost get caught by the Lings, but they do scare them away. Not too many losses of the Lings, although certainly more losses than JonSnow would have liked. The Lings in the natural of Intense didn't really get all that much done either. They were cleaned up by those Hellions.
Yeah, JonSnow's done a pretty good job defending his area from Intense's attack. Of course, we're going to have to see what the Banshee from Intense is going to be able to do, because this is a follow-up that a lot of times Zergs will trip up on, because they will defend that initial attack and then think they're safe for a few minutes. But the Terran has no plans of abandoning aggression anytime soon.
Yep, and as we're seeing that right now, the aggression is starting. Lots of Hellions being mixed in, 2 more on the reinforcement trail, and the Cloak is just going to be finishing up in a few seconds. There's not a whole lot of Spore Callers around the base for JonSnow. Yeah, 3rd base right now is under siege by Intense. JonSnow having nothing but Queens arriving to try to defend this. He's going to have to transfuse them to keep them alive as possible. Lings are coming out and trying to see what they can do about those Reapers and Hellions, but there's just too many of those barbecue cars. And we're going to see Hellbats now as well, which makes things more difficult for those Queens. Yep, JonSnow didn't really have the plan of dealing with these Hellbats. Unfortunately, he's just got these Lings. They're coming back in. They might be able to pick off a couple of the Reapers as the hatchery is about to go down. Intense turns around, starts flaming down all of the Lings, but more and more Lings flooding in. Finally, the Banelings getting in here, but nobody likes killing Hellbats with Banelings.
Yeah, and I mean, it's pretty expensive here for both sides. If we take a look at the units lost tab, JonSnow has spent a bit more trying to hold off these attacks. And it was almost a tough situation, too, defending that 3rd. I noticed he but transfused the hatchery. But before I talk about that, let's see this Banshee over here at the natural of JonSnow right now, doing some work here. He is going to rely on this Overseer to try to defend it with the Queens on the bottom, but the Banshee in and of itself has received 3 kills in its name. Yeah,
and he also got the Scout on the Spire. He's going to know all about that. He's going to pretty much have free vision of that little area in between the main and the natural that he was able to see. And of course, the layer, like you talked about with the Overseer, the layer going down at the natural. Hopefully that doesn't come in to bite JonSnow in the butt, but I know how drop-happy some Terrans can get on Catalina, especially with these spawns. I can kind of understand why he decided to build it in the natural.
Yes, Catalina for sure is a really annoying map to deal with drops on. I've seen too many games where that came into play, and that might still here, but for now we are going to see these lings from JonSnow roll on into that third base of Intense. Intense relying on SCVs here to try to defend. That's never a good situation, and those Banelings, oh my gosh, cleaning up so many of the units on the ground. The third has to be evacuated, and suddenly JonSnow here is showing some of his strength.
Yeah, swinging in Lings and Mutas. He's going to be targeting down that orbital command as much as he can. I don't think Intense will really let that happen. But again, with that Overlord just spewing out creep on the ground, it's going to be so annoying for Intense to deal with this.
Yeah, and with the Overlord just having pooped some of that creep there, it's going to be a bit of time before Intense will be able to retake the third. So that is definitely something JonSnow can be happy about. Let's take a look at the worker counts on both sides. JonSnow at 60, a little bit low in his situation. You might want to add a little more to that. I think he kind of felt pressured to just, put in a huge attack, which he has and did very well, I would say. In lieu of having droned. So that's kind of a trade-off he's made. Now he's got these mutas all the way in the main base of Intense. Can't quite kill off the missile turret. SCV repair. Very powerful.
It's just a little bit too good. He is going to try to settle for a refinery, which is certainly annoying to force Intense to rebuild. Might actually be able to pick up a couple more SCV kills. Gets one more for his name. Glaive Worm Bounce, almost killing off a few more, but he's not quite able to get it.
All right, so Intense is going to push out now with a little bit of a counter-attack. Now, JonSnow is busy working on some upgrades here. We can see 1-1 going down for the Lings on the ground, as well as centrifugal hooks. Now Intense is going to try to do the elevator on the edge of the main base.
Yeah.
Before he can do that, those mutas are arriving, but JonSnow cannot commit to that attack.
Yep. JonSnow going to be trying to come back in. There's a lot of Marines here, and as long as they're in force, especially with STEM and +1/+1 already completed, they're going to be a little bit too happy to engage those mutas. Now, we've got a ton of Banelings on the top. We've got the macro hatch as well for those quick unit reinforcements. And here comes the big push. The Hellbats pretty much all get lifted up. There's just a couple of left. And the Marines on the low ground. Man, that elevator, so many people hate it just for this reason.
Yeah, Intense. I mean, playing it perfectly, letting you roll your units all the way in so that the units on the lower ground are completely safe from them. And that is extremely annoying for JonSnow, but he is starting to target down these medevacs, and that's what you need to do to shut down this kind of a harassment.
Yeah, pretty much all of the Hellbats are gone. The only thing left is Marines, and with that many Banelings, I don't know how well JonSnow is actually, or how well Intense is actually going to be able to push any further. He may just need to wait for reinforcements.
Yeah, I'd like to see Intense right here start working at a second prong to this attack. Because eventually JonSnow is going to have defender's advantage here to push this off. Now, there is a fourth base from JonSnow right now being made. It's up to Intense to scout that and potentially harass it, so he can just spread JonSnow's army a little bit thinner. So we'll see if he can recognize the opportunity.
Yeah, you said you wanted to see a couple more prongs to this attack. Well, both players are reading your minds, and they're both going to be looking to do that. Ling's coming in for JonSnow. Potentially, he was going to be looking to hit a either third base at a different location or a fourth base for Intense. And Intense, he's going for the medevac drop on the right-hand side at that fourth base of JonSnow. At the same time, he's starting to get a little pressure from the Mutalisks, but they have been beaten back.
That drop on the fourth base has landed now, and, well, JonSnow's units are all the way on the other side of the world. So can Intense get in those Marines in the back to do some shooting? Because if they can, that might give them a better chance of taking out that hatch, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case.
In the main base of Intense, JonSnow was able to sneak some Lings in. Now, of course, the production and the rally from Intense is going to be good enough to deal with the Lings. They're not that high in numbers. So both players able to do a little bit of damage. A couple of SCVs picked off, a couple of drones picked off as well. And JonSnow, he's kind of pushed back Intense from the middle of the map.
Yeah, and I just saw these mutas cleaning up that full drop that was at the fourth base of JonSnow. And that's always a great thing. That's what's so wonderful about having mutas in your composition. Sometimes I see Zerg players play against Terran Bio and they don't make mutas, which is really, really strange. because Mutas can do these things we're seeing right now. You know, defending drops, having such great map control and mobility, and now being able to do a harassment. 2 turrets not being repaired by Intense in time. These Mutas will be able to target them down, but not much more. There's just too many turrets around in that main base.
Yeah, Intense has done the thing where he just throws down a ton of missile turrets, but not quite at the 4th base location. They just haven't finished up just yet. One does finish, and it does get sniped pretty much immediately there by JonSnow. He is distracting Intense, but Intense does have a full medevac of Marines landing in the main base of JonSnow, sniping down quite a few drones there before they do get pulled, and Lings are the response. But at the 4th base of JonSnow, Intense is dropping a Hellbat and some more Marines, forcing JonSnow to kind of pick where he wants to send his army.
And JonSnow has done a good job defending these 2 drops. The Muta's going after one, the Lings and Banes going after the other, and able to clean up one of them. The second drop on the bottom side has only 1 Marine left, so well defended, I'd say. And he's making an attack on the 3rd base of Intense right now. JonSnow.
I don't know that it didn't really necessarily do all that much. It may have cleaned away the SCVs. I wasn't actually looking right when it hit. But there is a healthy number of Thors in that one Marine that you talked about back in the 4th base. He's getting himself a couple of drone kills before being cleaned up by the Lings. But this has pulled the majority of the army of JonSnow a little bit out of position.
Yeah, and right now Intense is making his push. He needs to do some good damage here because, guys, if you look at the number of workers killed this game, it has strongly favored JonSnow, especially in the attacks over the last few minutes on the 3rd and whatnot.
Yeah.
So right here, Intense trying to split his army right here to see if he can avoid those banelings as best as he can. He is going to be able to force JonSnow to back off a little bit as he ventures on to creep. Always a precarious thing for Terrans to do. But Intense is feeling a little confident here.
Yep, he's got his Thors at the front, of course, to absorb those Baneling hits. And it looked like in the first part of that attack, a lot of the Banes hit the Hellbats. Now, the Mutas are coming from behind. They're taking a little bit of damage from those Marines before winging their way away from the damage. And Ling's just getting picked off there, quite a few of them.
Yeah, this is a very methodical push here from Intense, very well positioned, and now he is going to try to utilize this opportunity to sneak in a drop at the top of JonSnow's main base as JonSnow runs those Banelings, uses a lot of them just to take out a couple of units there. Not the best thing. And JonSnow with the Mutas, though, is able to chase off that drop. And I think JonSnow is going to be able to potentially clean up this army down here in the center, and it looks like JonSnow is the one with the units remaining.
Yeah, now the army supply does still heavily favor Intense overall, but JonSnow has pushed Intense back all the way across the map, and there is a drop in the north, but it's just those Marines. And so far, Intense's Marine drops have not been super effective in this game, but with this many Mutas out in the middle of the map, this one may be able to do a bit of damage.
Oh, yes, but what damage is there to be done? There is no more mining going on in that main base. Hatcheries will take a while to be taken out. So let's see if JonSnow can handle this situation. Oh, these drones being transferred all cannon fodder, but wait, those Banelings are going to clean up most of those units to buy the drones safe passage.
Yep, and as the drones continue on down to like the 5th base location of JonSnow, Intense is pushing forward deeper and deeper on creep. The complete surround by the Lings won't really make a huge difference, and now the Mutas do show up. There's still one Thor remaining as one does go down to the Mutas, and a nice cleanup there by JonSnow. At the kind of 4th base location, more Marines getting dropped. Intense trying to just pull his opponent apart bit by bit.
Yes, and JonSnow still hanging strong there. Intense as well. No one has secured a major advantage here just yet. And while JonSnow does have the worker lead, this is kind of the point in the game where the Terran has, you know, up to 4 bases. A 5th command center now I'm seeing being made. That means that there's a lot of mules to be thrown down, which will even the worker count.
Yeah, and of course his kind of 4th base is that planetary fortress, which just makes it even harder to crack for JonSnow. Intense is rallying pretty much his entire army up to kind of the 11 o'clock location, and this will soon be discovered by the Lings. He's loading up, well, he was trying to load up 3 or 4 medevacs full of units before the Lings flooded in and kind of ruined his party.
All right, let's take a look at the upgrades right now. Looks like Intense does have the advantage so far with 3-3 on the ground for the bow, as well as +2 attack for mech and air. Muta's trying to fly in, speaking of air, on that bottom planetary fortress with all those turrets. Well, Poor Marine there. Can you imagine 20 mutas on your face, just dropping those glaives all at once? I guess it's a pretty quick death.
Even worse than that is that's the only Marine that escaped the medevac that just got cleaned up that was full of Marines. So he watched all of his buddies die, and then he himself had to try to fight 20 mutalisks.
So it's emotional and physical distress there in that split second.
Just those couple of moments.
Here from Intense, focusing down that spawning pool. Will he be able to get it? It's going to be close. Those mutas focusing down that medevac. Oh my gosh. You know, I was thinking, would it have been better to just target down those Marines as opposed to the medevac, just to save the spawning pool? Looks like JonSnow was able to get everything he needed to be done, so.
Yeah. He was able to make it happen. This planetary fortress at the 5th base location is not getting repaired fast enough. It does go down, but JonSnow's own 5th base gets annihilated as well, and this big Terran army is potentially going to be surrounded as JonSnow splits his army. Baneling's in the middle of the map. He doesn't have a whole lot right here, but he's got a lot of forces closing in, and now the Baneling's going for the complete surround. The Thor's doing a fair amount of damage. The second wave comes in. They're splitting against the Marines, and the Banelings clean everything up. The Thors go down, and JonSnow has held once again. He cleaned up a planetary fortress and lost a hatchery.
Fantastic maneuver by JonSnow, but still this game is so close, guys. JonSnow's been losing some drones here and there, mostly from building buildings and not replacing them. On the other hand, Intense still holding strong here. Both players very even here at this point in supply and mining and just about everything.
Wow, and we're at the point of the game where the adrenal glands upgrade is actually being purchased for JonSnow. Not something you see very often, or at least I feel like we don't see it very often. As Intense, I'm assuming he's going to be looking to establish back that base he lost, but he does have 2 Hellbats splitting off down south, potentially going to be trying to target down that 5th base, which is being remade.
Hey, with the way things are going, we might even see a cameo from HiSec auto-tracking as well.
Oh, don't be silly.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. My apologies for that.
Ridiculous.
JonSnow just tried to attempt to fly by that 3rd base here at the top at Intense.
Yep.
Had all his units there. That's probably the most important part for him to defend in this game right now. It's really where all the mining is going on, as well as that planetary on the bottom side. So now Intense is going to utilize this elevator again and see what he can accomplish. These Thors will be able to scare the mutas off a little bit. It's going to be down to JonSnow. I've seen some great surrounds from this guy this game. Let's see if he can pull it off again. It's going to be tricky, though, with 2 different elevations.
Is he even really going for the surround? It looks like his Lings and Banes are streaming through the middle of the map. He could be going mostly for the base trade, as even the mutas fly completely past this army. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be that sort of base trade scenario. He's letting his main get sacked. He's going to be losing his spawning pool, and the Spire will also be potentially going down there. But at the 4th base of Intense, JonSnow just used a lot of Banelings, and the Planetary Fortress taking down a couple more. In the 3rd base of Intense, we have the mutas just destroying every single SCV, and yeah, none of them actually escape.
Oh, and this is a trade that I think is looking good for JonSnow at the moment, because look at the bases he's taken out versus the one Intense took out. It's not even just a numbers thing, which is obvious because Intense lost 2 bases, but those were his only mining bases, guys. JonSnow lost his main base. Nothing was going on there anymore.
Yeah, he lost very little infrastructure, and Intense is continuing to push forward. But if this goes any further in the base trade category, which it doesn't look like it's quite going, as JonSnow pulls back his mutas, and pretty much everything else has been defeated by the just production of Intense. Intense is continuing to make good headway against the bases of JonSnow, and now he's actually getting to that more important infrastructure.
Yeah, what I was saying about it looking good for Intense, that kind of depended on whether or not Intense could stop this from continuing. It looks like it has. It looks like he hasn't. So now JonSnow is going to have to be able to replace a lot of those lost tech structures. Really, right now, all he can make is just Zerglings.
Yeah, he definitely is trying to split off units every which way. Unfortunately, it's just a couple of Zerglings heading all to different points of the map. And if he tries to engage this army, which he's doing now, the Banelings roll forward. The Muta's coming on top of the Thors. Intense trying to micro back. He's pre-split pretty well. Splits again pretty well again. And actually, everything gets cleaned up by the just overwhelming numbers of JonSnow. The reinforcement train is a little bit slow for Intense.
Yeah, and Intense realizing that it's a dangerous thing to be fighting on creep in this situation. This is the army you have, and it's going to be the one you're going to have for a little bit here as Intense struggling a little bit in the mining category. So he is going to have to play it a little more cost effectively from here on out, at least for the next few minutes as he recovers his mining.
Yeah, he's definitely way down in economy in comparison. Yeah, it comes down to, like you talked earlier, the bases that are mining versus the bases that are not mining. Now, at the, I think this is the 5th base location of JonSnow, kind of lost track. We've got Banes moving in. A lot of Marauders here with the Hellbats to absorb the shots. The Marines getting split on the back end of things, and the Mutas clean up the Thor. The Marauders still stand there. They're targeting down that hatchery, and Intense lives on to snipe this base once more.
Oh, and that is a great pickoff here from Intense. That was one of the last mining bases for JonSnow. Now both players are actually on one base saturation of mining and no more. As remember, Intense, while losing this base on the bottom here, actually just floated another command center over to that location. So, I mean, that's kind of one thing that you can rely on as Terran to just kind of stabilize an economy. JonSnow now has to regain all of his tech, starting his lair once again here, the 33-minute mark.
Oh, wow, yeah, he even lost that lair. I almost forgot about that as I was watching him rebuild the Baneling nest just a few minutes ago at, you know, the 30-minute mark. But the Mutas come in. They have fallen greatly in numbers. I mean, if we think back just a couple of minutes, how much bigger that Muta ball is, and now it's completely almost depleted.
Yeah, I think just in the last few minutes, with JonSnow trading so many of his units away to take out those of Intense, now having lost all his tech, it's going to take him so much time to replace all of it. Intense here is pushing out now, and I don't know if JonSnow has a unit composition to be able to take this army face to face.
Yeah, we will have to wait and see. And like you talked about just a moment ago, we've got that orbital floating from the main base of Intense over to what I guess would be his 5th base location. But again, he's got those orbitals left over from the beginning of the game, so he can always mule hammer whatever base he takes. Now, JonSnow is moving in. He's got lots of lings. Well, maybe not so many lings. He's got a handful of banelings as well as he engages against some Marauders and Hellbats. It doesn't go particularly well. But Intense getting cleaned up. A couple of Marines in the middle of the map. Not sure what they were doing, but they're dead now.
Man, for a game one, this has actually gone on so long and so close, I might have to add. Even now, it's not entirely easy to say who has the upper hand because JonSnow is just about recovering now. He's got his Bane tech and everything done. He's starting his Spire again. And remember, what he does have right here is 39 workers mining. That's a fair number more than Intense. Of course, that's pending the mules, whether or not you want to include those, which are, of course, very important. But the supplies overall, very even, 110 to 101. So this is a tough game.
Yeah, another 2 medevacs loading up with Marines as Intense is worried about this incoming attack from JonSnow. And, of course, Muta's coming in. They're actually able to clean up the missile turrets that were there at the kind of 4th base location of Intense. And they're going to be able to target down the command center, at least until these Marines show up. Oh, JonSnow sticking around maybe a few moments too long with those Mutas. Loses 2 or 3 of them too many to the Marines. But now the Banelings are going to be rolling in the Lings, keeping those... Well, I guess the Banelings weren't really needed.
They might be down here, though. But then again, these are Marauders we're looking at, not as many Marines in the front. So Intense is going to actually force JonSnow to back off here, as JonSnow doesn't want to waste those Banelings on the Marauders. And frankly, I just think Intense has a bigger army at the moment down here. So JonSnow needs to be careful. He is going to choose to engage here right now. Oh, decides to back off. That's going to lead to a few kills for no reason. So he's going to just run back onto his creep right now.
And Intense, he's scanning one base. He doesn't scan the other base that JonSnow is just now taking. JonSnow trying to take some of those insurance bases. And here comes the wraparound with the Lings. The Marines have already been pre-split backwards away from the Banelings, but it's not quite good enough as the Marauders stand strong on the front end. On the back end, though, the reinforcing Marines are able to cut down some of the Lings from JonSnow, and it looks like this base, whatever number it is, will fall, while there are some Lings and Banelings down in the south attacking the current mining base of Intense, and Intense pushes on forward. JonSnow has failed to stop him once again.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the camel that's going to break Jon Snow's back, or actually the straw that's going to break the camel known as Jon Snow's back. Whatever, man. Tongue-tied, it's all good, because look at this. Intense has the advantage now. He's finally broken Jon Snow's army. 85 army supply to 30, and Jon Snow left with just really a handful of mutas. Not going to be able to deal with any number of Marines. Look at that. Just those handful on the bottom are going to be able to chase off the Marines. We do have Banelings here, though. They are going to basically be the last hope, the Hail Mary, if you will, for Jon Snow, but not going to be quite enough.
Yep. GG, well played, comes in. I did notice that. I was like, how appropriate.
I know, because it is the Super Bowl you guys are missing, so we're going to try to mix in some football metaphors. But yeah, there you go, guys. GG. And that is going to be a very eventful 40-minute game, won by Intense.
Indeed. Definitely a good way to start out the night. Of course, this is a best of 5, so we've still got more action to come between these two guys, Intense and Jon Snow. And hopefully, if they're even half as good as that game, I will be so happy between these two guys. That was a great game.
All right. So with that victory, Intense is now up 1-0. And we are going to head into game number 2 very soon. Of course, as with a typical show match or tournament, the person who loses the previous match is going to choose the next map. So we'll let Jon Snow make that decision. But in the meantime, guys, if you haven't voted in our poll already about who's going to win this series, place your bets right now. Because if you keep waiting, your vote's not going to be as impressive, right? You don't want to miss out.
I kind of wish, yeah, exactly. It's not going to be as impressive because it's like, oh, if you wait until it's, let's just pretend that Intense goes up game 2 and then we're in game 3 and he's like about to win. You're like, yeah, Intense is going to win this one. That's cheating pretty much. But yeah, like you said, Jon Snow does get to pick the next map. I'm kind of curious as to what exactly he is going to pick. It is Vanny Research Station. So I believe that's the one with 3 gold bases on it. We'll see if that ends up playing a big role in this.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting, especially if you're a Zerg player who wants to macro hard, heavy, just sort of take over the map. That could definitely benefit you, a map like that with so many rich resources to be mined.
Yeah, and this map, I believe, also kind of creates interesting paths of, like, with the way the bases are laid out, it kind of just leads you on a straight line to your opponent. So we'll have to see how that works out as well. And I'm loving the chat on Hitbox TV. This is something that we don't get quite on Twitch. I mean, Twitch emotes are great and all, but when you actually see someone, like, post a GIF just straight up in the chat, it never gets old.
Yeah, that's really cool. And, of course, there is a built-in way to make sure that it isn't abused. Subscribers are the ones who are allowed to do it. So if you guys want to have this this privilege, don't forget to subscribe to the Team Gravity channel right now. But you don't have to, because you'll be able to just benefit from all these features that Hitbox provides you by just making an account and following here today. If you guys are watching this from the Team Liquid embedded page, you're missing out, guys. There's a lot of stuff going on in this chat here that you really should be privy to. So just make an account, really easy. You don't even have to do the email confirmation business. That's kind of sometimes annoying. You just got to type your email twice, password, and you're good to go.
Indeed. And it looks like I lied to you guys a little bit. Jon Snow did choose a Vanny Research Station, but we're not running from this season's current pool. We are running from last season's. So I guess that means, like, King Sejong Station, Foxtrot Labs, Nimbus, and some other ones are back in there, and we're going to be going on to Overgrowth LE.
Yeah, Overgrowth, classic map. It's becoming a classic map. It's been around for 2 seasons right now, not including this one. And it's actually still around in this one, so that kind of just speaks to how it's a fan favorite, I have to say.
Yeah, it feels like we've been seeing this map forever, kind of in the same way that it felt like we saw, Frost forever. Not that I mind seeing some maps forever, but sometimes it does seem like it's just been, like, weren't we playing this back at the very beginning of StarCraft 2? It feels like it's been that long, but of course it hasn't. But yeah, Overgrowth, a map that both of these guys are going to be very familiar on, and I'm sure that these guys have played each other tons on ladders, so potentially they're going to know all sorts of tips and tricks about each other on this map.
Yep, and actually looks like, just to correct myself here, it appears that only mods are allowed to post images. I thought it was subscribers too, but I guess not.
Ah.
So, but nonetheless, there's still a lot of cool emotes and stuff that you guys can use. They look
Mm-hmm.
actually really unique because a lot of
They do.
emotes on various websites all look the same. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something amusing you guys can work on in the chat. But now we are in game
Yep.
number 2, guys. And let's see what's going on here. Overgrowth LE is the map once again. And we do have the victor of the previous game spawning on the upper right-hand side. He is representing Storm Gaming. He's the Red Terran, guys. His name is Intense.
And in the southwest position, the blue Zerg. He is down 0-1 in this best of 5. It is JonSnow. American Zerg playing for Flipside Tactics.
All right, so in that previous game, we did see Intense open up with a Reaper expansion. And he actually did a pretty decent job with his initial Reaper. He definitely killed a lot more drones. I believe it was 2. That's 2 more than what a Zerg normally expects. We'll see
Indeed.
if that is a possibility this time around. And it's kind of interesting because on Catalina, that's not really like an easy map per se for Reapers to necessarily go in and just abuse the opponent because there's only so many ledges they can hop up. Overgrowth, it's a little better. We'll see if Intense can take advantage of that again.
Yeah, you kind of got that corner that allows you to go from the very, very low ground to kind of that natural mid ground and then up to the high ground, which sometimes does end up working quite well for the Reapers. And it looks like it is going to be right into the pool for our friend JonSnow. And I believe it was Rax first for Intense. But either way, that hatch first for JonSnow is going to be very nice.
Now, last game, we did see JonSnow go ahead and grab gas in his opener, and he did prioritize the creation of speedlings in the early game to just go ahead and get that map control, and he ended up making a little more than he would prefer, but he did try to send those onto Intense's natural. We'll see if that's what he does this time around. A lot of Zergs do like to open up gasless just because it's a little more economical to do so, so that is a preference. We'll see if JonSnow is going to make that. Does have his pull going on right now.
And the first Reaper is on the way for Intense. It's going to be hut-hutting its way across the map in just a few moments. And like you talked about before, JonSnow is probably going to be feeling pretty good coming off of the first part of that last game, killing himself a couple of drones. Maybe he gets a little overconfident after this, and, well, maybe not, since he's only going with that one Reaper.
All right, and, well, I don't see JonSnow building an extractor just yet, so maybe he is this time going to go ahead and just rely on multiple queens early on to defend against what would be Intense's harassment. And remember last game, Intense did go with a 5-minute third CC. That may be a reason why JonSnow is choosing to actually skip speed for now, because he wants to stay up on the economy too. This Reaper's going to get in here and do some work.
Yep, JonSnow only he built those 4 lings, so he hasn't overcommitted super hard or anything like that. But that Reaper, oh, it's just so slippery and Intense, much like, you know, many of the Terrans at his level. They don't really lose that one Reaper to so many slow lings, to just the 4.
Yeah, it's all about just making sure you don't venture onto creep for too long, because that's really where slowlings can catch up to a Reaper. But otherwise, it's not really too difficult to keep your Reaper alive. Now, I'm saying this, but if it was me, I'd probably have lost the Reaper a long time ago.
Oh yeah, I like somehow if this was me playing, somehow the Overlord would have killed my Reaper, and I would just be like, oh, all right, I guess that Reaper's gone. Ling's going to try to scoot by into the main base. They do run past all of those Marines. I guess that was just JonSnow hoping against hope that he was going to be able to run into the main base and just be a little bit annoying, but Intense is too good for that. Maybe JonSnow was trying to channel life and just get into the main base somehow, but not going to happen.
Yeah, and then sometimes Zergs will just try to sneak those lings or see, you know, maybe they can catch that command center still under construction, maybe try to kill the SCV making it. But I think JonSnow was a little too slow for that anyhow, because the command center was done. But now we're going to see JonSnow at 614. He should be looking to expand now. No, wait, he's actually choosing to go with a Roach Warren instead, or maybe he's going to do all 3. I don't know here. Oh, no, he's going for Lair. That's interesting. So he's gone for the Lair. He's gone for double Evo Chamber.
Uh-huh.
I think he wants to make some
Now,
kind of a timing with Roach.
Now, JonSnow is heading into the main base with that Overlord. He's about to see that there's already an armory, but no, he doesn't have to because the Hellbats have already been transformed. They're on creep now, and they're heading their way towards the natural. Of course, there's even a couple of SCVs brought on the line, and they're hopefully going to be repairing those Hellbats. And this is kind of reminding me of what Colt did that one time in WCS Finals, but is it going to work as well for Intense? We will have to see. He's targeting down one Queen and another. The transfuses have pretty much all been burned through, but so have most of the Terran units for Intense. He is going to have to pull back.
Yeah, we are seeing some of the benefits of opening gasless here for JonSnow right now because this is a much more cost-effective way of defending Intense's advance compared to last game. Because if you rely on those speedlings and maybe even banelings as well, you lose them to, you know, if it's an even trade, that's already something Intense can be happy about. But when you use Queens, you have those transfuses, you keep them alive, they're much more resilient as well from the get-go against Hellbats and Hellions. And so JonSnow has been able to fight that off without losing as much.
Very true, but will he take too much damage on this hatchery? He shouldn't be taking too much damage as here come the Queens down here, but this is 4 Hellbats. Intense is going to be forced to pull back JonSnow. He's got a couple of Roaches in there as well, producing a few more just to mix in for the defense. Oh, adding on 8, actually.
Okay, so it looks like right now JonSnow's researching +1 on that evolution chamber. He's not doing it on the second, though. So I guess he just built those 2 to help limit the surface area those Terran units can get through. So it's like a half wall, sort of. But otherwise, he is definitely committing to Roach here. It looks like he's getting that Roach speed right now. He's starting to crank out more of those little bugs. And, well, it's up to JonSnow to decide when he wants to hit. It might come when those 2 upgrades finish up for those Roaches.
Yep, it could very well be a bit of a +1 glial reconstitution timing attack. The 3rd CC is finished up. It's transforming into an orbital in just a few moments, so Intense may be looking to secure his own 3rd base relatively soon. JonSnow has very wisely dropped down Overlords at both spots, and oh, those Hellions not able to get as many kills as they would have liked. Looks like they were able to pick off some of the drones, and the Roaches clean up that entire attack.
All right, so looks like with these 2 Overlords just dropping the creep onto the 3rds, it's going to be a while before Intense can take a 3rd mining location here. And when JonSnow is pushing out these Roaches like this, it might even take a little longer. Let's see what JonSnow can do.
Ooh. Yeah, the SCVs were brought preemptively off the line for that repair. The Roach is able to burst down one of the bunkers. The other 2 bunkers have not completed yet, but JonSnow doesn't have maybe quite enough with, of course, no Banelings there. It's just Roaches, so there's no good splash damage to clear out those clumped up groups of Terran.
Yeah, now with those 2 bunkers finished, I don't see JonSnow being able to break through just yet, but one thing he can do is set up a contain, make sure Intense isn't able to land that 3rd base. I mean, look at it right there at the top, seeing the creep on the bottom. No answers
JonSnow is just laughing at Intense. He's just like, yes, both of your 3rd locations are completely blocked. Just laughing maniacally.
Yep, and that means Intense is going to be stuck on 2 while JonSnow is looking to take a 4th right now over at his gold base. So
yeah,
he is going to look to pull ahead here in the economy. That's going to set him up very well in the mid-game.
Yep. Now, Intense is starting that +2 weapons attack and adds on +2 armor right now, so that is going to be good for him. Of course, if he can maintain some sort of upgrade advantage over JonSnow, then he'll be feeling pretty good about that. Even though he wasn't feeling too good about how that attack went earlier, it could have gone certainly a lot worse. And he's definitely not feeling good about the fact that there's an Overlord creep blocking his 3rd. But not everything is going JonSnow's way.
Yeah, Overlord finally does get taken out. Intense will finally be able to take a 3rd base. Now, last game, Intense did start, making the rounds around JonSnow's bases with the drops and whatnot. We're nearing the 13-minute mark now, so this is kind of the time when Intense would like to try that again. But let's see if he can make it happen. This time around, he has actually been able to keep up in his macro, I would say. In fact, he's not even that much behind in overall supply, which generally speaking, Zerg is a little more ahead at this point in the game, just because of the way the macro mechanics are balanced. So Intense may have an opportunity here.
Yep, and he drops down his 3rd orbital, going to be calling down a very small Mule Hammer on that base. Gets a scan on the 3rd of JonSnow. We'll see the entire army of JonSnow. And I mean, it's not anything too fantastical. Ling, Bane, and Roaches is what he's going to see.
Oh, yes. And you know what? Because he has committed to Roaches, we're not seeing an additional type of unit being added on to Jon Snow's army. And this is kind of what I was talking about last game. Mutas. The big thing about having mutas is being able to defend drops. With Jon Snow just relying on ground units here for so long in this game, could be an opportunity for the drops of Intense to do more work than they were able to last game.
They could. Now, unfortunately for Intense, unlike last game where we saw him dropping medevacs full of Marines all over the place and pulling his opponent apart, he hasn't been really doing any of that. And as I say that, he loads up a medevac full of 8 Marines, so good on him. He's loading up a second medevac on the right side of the map, so maybe he is finally going to start to do that pulling apart of Jon Snow. Fortunately, Jon Snow has Overlords spread across the map, so we will kind of see this coming both sides.
Yeah, not just the Overlords, but the creep spread has been fantastic as well. That's going to see the right drop going the whole way. The one on the left was spotted by an Overlord, so the map control from Jon Snow is excellent. But Intense is going to try to say, okay, you can see my stuff coming, but I have 3 things coming at you right now. What are you going to do about it?
Yep, his 2-2 has finished up, and he is going to be starting to pressure that gold base. He's pressuring what would be the 5th base of Jon Snow as well. And with siege tanks set up, can Jon Snow actually break this location? Roaches flooding in. They're getting directly on top of those tanks, and this is a total massacre for Jon Snow. He presses past everything that Intense has, and now Intense just has a handful of Marines left over.
Oh yeah, that has been just one-sided battle there for Jon Snow in his favor. Now he's going to look to pressure the 3rd base. Intense, on the other hand, has two groups of armies on the 3rd and 4th base of Jon Snow. Who can take out what bases here?
Yep, unfortunately for Intense, he can lift that orbital at the 3rd base location, and Lings and Roaches are notoriously bad at shooting up. Now this Spire that you talked about a little bit earlier is not being focused down, although it does have a lot of Marines around it. They're trying to deal with the Lings as they're just attacking and getting a perfect surround there. Banes finally do show up. The Queens clean up one of the medevacs. The other medevac may very well be able to escape on out of here, but Intense has been routed. He wasn't able to do that crippling damage that he maybe would have liked to, but he did clean up that gold base location of Jon Snow.
You know, one thing I'm kind of curious about is why he didn't lift all of those units that he dropped at the natural just now. He kind of let them get surrounded by those banelings. Without mutas to be able to pursue medevacs, he could have definitely saved that group of units. But no matter, he is going to now have his new army streaming down the map onto creep, begging Jon Snow to basically try those, patented surrounds we saw that previous game.
Yep, but unlike that previous game, Intense does have those siege tanks, which can prove a little bit difficult for those surrounds. We do have, once again, another medevac loading up full of Marines. Intense loves, apparently, his just 8 Marine drops. Other players tend to mix it up, adding in Hellbats or whatever, but in this game, and in the last game, just lots of 8 Marine drops.
And now we are going to see both players try to position up for the inevitable battle, it looks like, that's going to happen on this right side. Now we're going to see Jon Snow make the first move with the Banelings rolling in, as well as the Roaches coming from 3 different sides. The siege tanks were not sieged until now, just a hair too late. And that means that Jon Snow will clean up that army there, winning that battle easily.
It cleans up a couple of medevacs. Unfortunately, he won't be able to clean up the medevac on the left side just yet. He's going to be forced to evacuate out his main base, while in the middle of the map, Jon Snow has been beaten back. Intense is trying to claim what victories he can, but their victories, they're just so small.
Well, it does look like Jon Snow has to be running right now. His main base still under siege. Some of these Lings are sitting here not doing anything. Now they are going to be able to surround those Marines, as the mutas will clean up the medevacs. So now with mutas, Jon Snow is going to be able to do a much better job here of defending whatever drops Intense will throw at him.
Indeed, and it looks like Intense is floating a CC over to that 4th base location. He's going to be also dropping a lot of those missile turrets as well. He's a little bit worried about mutas. I don't know that there's so many out there that he needs as many turrets, but in the event that his army is elsewhere, those turrets will help him lock down that position quite easily.
Now, this game, I feel like Jon Snow has had a much better economy. He was set up very well early on. That's kind of what has led him to winning some of these battles. But the thing is, he hasn't really done much damage to Intense's economy either, and that's why Intense, despite some of these battles maybe not being as cost-effective as he'd like, he's able to just macro like a warrior right now. I mean, his army supply is very high. He's actually even higher overall than JonSnow.
Indeed. Now, JonSnow is starting to camp the production of Intense. He's starting to just try to put that pressure on, but the Thor pops out, gets some nice shots off, and these Marines may actually be catching the Mutas. One goes down, a second gets eliminated, and a third almost dies as well, but JonSnow is able to escape, and that could have been a much better catch for Intense, but he'll take what he can get.
All right, so now we'll see Intense looking perhaps to push again. He's rallying some of his units on the underneath his 4th base. And JonSnow gonna just have to set up his army again. We've seen him do this very well many times, but does he have the quantity to make it work? The quantity advantage. If Intense can set up these tanks, which he wasn't able to do last time, that might make this a little tricky. Let's see.
All right, the Mutas coming in from the south. The Banelings getting destroyed by the tanks, and the numbers are certainly a lot better this time for Intense than we saw in some of the previous battles. The siege tanks were pre-sieged, like you talked about, which certainly helped. And in the kind of 3rd base location of Intense, JonSnow is rolling in. He's got Banelings to try to clean up some of the SCVs. He does get at least 5 there, but JonSnow still has not really dealt with Intense on the right side of the map, although he does clean up pretty much everything except for the medevacs.
And there's a Ling run by that has been happening on Intense's 3rd base. It's absolutely vacant right now. And well, that's because of the SCVs being pulled. But that does delay a lot of the mining there. As far as units killed, there's that in the center. Oh my gosh.
Every medevac went down for Intense. JonSnow doing a good job of kind of like last game where Intense was the one pulling JonSnow apart. In this game, it's JonSnow starting to pull Intense apart. Maybe he can continue these sort of counterattacks like you were talking about with the Ling run-bys. Maybe he can continue them, but for now it looks like he's going to be pulling back.
Well, Intense now is going to be in a very awkward spot here with these Marines. He's trying to run as best as he can into the safe confines of the planetary fortress. But JonSnow is going to say, okay, I'm not going to follow you there. I'm just going to go for another target.
Yep. And then the target is the natural. There is 2 Thors going to be blocking that direct entrance to the natural. Banelings are going to start rolling on through. There isn't a whole lot for them to hit in terms of economy, but of course there are lots of squishy Marines for them to take down. And a couple of SCVs go down just to add insult to injury. And oh, these Marines have been far too overstimmed as the Mutas just tear them apart.
And we're starting to see JonSnow pull ahead quite a fair bit here. 130 overall supply to 98. That's reflected in the army as well. If JonSnow can break these 2 Thors down, we may be seeing JonSnow getting into that main, but it doesn't look like he's going to be able to do it just yet.
Yeah, JonSnow is crashing upon the shore time and time again, but he cannot break Intense. He gets so close to breaking Intense, it seems, but Intense stands strong, and even though Intense likewise hasn't done a ton of damage to JonSnow, it doesn't seem to matter. JonSnow can't crack him. Now, Mutas at the 4th-ish base location, I guess it's kind of 3rd base location, do pick up a couple of SCV kills, but again, not necessarily the big wins that JonSnow needs.
You've got this command center here from Intense, almost looking like it's aimlessly flying across the center, but it actually wants to land at that gold base. And that's going to be a really tricky place for Intense to try to defend. We even have a creep tumor. Oh, those Lings are getting there just in time to deny the landing. That's so frustrating. Now these Mutas will be able to chase that down. It's so tough at this point in the game to take out this command, or to secure this location. But for now, it looks like Intense will be able to do it. But you have to think JonSnow is going to want to hit that very soon.
Yep, and I imagine Intense will be turning that into a planetary fortress as he hits that key right now. And Mutas are going to have to be careful because there's a couple of Thors just kind of hanging around this planetary fortress. And like you were talking about, JonSnow is going to want to hit this base. He's going to want to take it out. But similarly, Intense is going to want to save it. He's going to want to defend it. And those Thors are going to do a great job of that.
All right now, JonSnow just trying to rally up his army a little bit here. He is kind of... hasn't really gotten to that max amount that, you know, a Zerg would love. And what's the problematic about that isn't
right
just
side
the
of the
numbers.
Map. The 4th base of Intense. Banelings rolling in. They get a couple of kills there. Maybe not fantastic because of the planetary fortress. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh, and there's something else going on here too. Muta's trying to fly in before those missile turrets are finished, but one of them is. That's going to force JonSnow to back off. But to complete the thought, if a Zerg isn't allowed to max out, what happens is they can't bank. And if they can't bank, they're not going to have the reinforcement advantage that a Zerg loves to have in a late game scenario. And that's why Intense has been able to just really keep up his production in macro and economy here, because JonSnow just hasn't really been able to get a supply advantage overall in this game.
Very true. Now, those upgrades finishing up the chitinous plating in particular for JonSnow, and also it looks like the level 3 armor is going to be finishing up. He also got adrenal glands once again, so good on JonSnow. Going to have some pretty crazy Zerglings as soon as 3-3 finishes up. Intense, he's got that medevac full of Marines on the right side of the map. He's got his main army pushing through the middle of the map, and he's got a big train of reinforcements joining up. So on the right side, at this kind of fourth base location of JonSnow, is a small attack, but in the middle of the map, the Marauder is trying to deal with the Ultralisk as the Thor does get cleaned up there, and JonSnow pulls back to deal with the drop on the right side, which didn't really do anything.
Not do all too much. Not all the drones were pulled quickly enough, but the drop is happening again. Intense staying on it. Drones being pulled now to try to surround those Marines. So that's going to lead to a few worker kills. In the center, we're going to have a group of Marine Marauder get massacred by Banelings.
Absolutely destroyed. And Intense, he's got a small group of Marines that were maybe trying to be hero Marines as they almost tried to take on an Ultralisk and Banelings. But JonSnow kited on by, and one thing that I really like from Intense is he's clearing up this creep. Now, he is still kind of standing on creep, but at least he's trying to clear it out. And like you called out JonSnow's creep spread earlier in this game, on the left side, it's been maced. Well, it was untouched.
It was. Now, I guess you could say part of it, the chain has been broken. But these Ultras will be able to fight on the creep until now, and they are getting in some really good swipes at those units of the Terran. Intense splitting like crazy here to make sure he can maximize cost efficiency in his battle. But now he's going to have to pull SCVs to repair that planetary fortress. Is it going to be enough to out-counter those DPS, the great DPS of the Ultras? Not quite, as JonSnow will break the gold base.
Yep, Intense, he's forced to pick up and leave. JonSnow takes the game. It's 1-1. For the Team Gravity preliminary Fight Night match. And one thing that I almost didn't notice, just because I'm so used to seeing it, is the 3-3 from our Terran player. I mean, how often do you see 3-3 for Zerg finish that kind of ahead, that far ahead of the 3-3 of the Terran? Normally, you talk about the 3-3 of the Terran finishing so much further because the Zerg has to get Hive and all of that. But in this case, JonSnow beat him to chitinous plating, adrenal glands, and 3-3.
Yeah, I mean, the upgrades, huge factor. Ultimately, not being able to hold that gold base is the straw that breaks the camel's back here for Intense. I got that right this time.
Yeah.
And with that, JonSnow able to even the odds here and get some of that momentum back. So 2 long, really eventful macro games. And, well, both players very even right now.
Yeah, this was such a good idea to match these two guys up just because of, again, how closely matched they are, as you were saying. And to kind of continue with the football references, I guess this is kind of like the first down for JonSnow. He was behind the line a little bit, but he's managed to gain back some of that momentum. He's managed to take back a game. And we're not going to be seeing that 3-0 sweep from either player. So, you know, evening things up, which I always like to see.
Yeah. And just a reminder, guys, this event here is being sponsored by Hitbox TV. This is Team Gravity's Fight Night you are watching. So far, it's a best of 5 here between JonSnow and Intense, winner of which will receive $10. We also got 2 more amazing matches coming up, guys. We're going to have Gosu User against Pilly Pilly following this. And then our headlining event is going to be Masa versus Violet in a best of 7 for $60.
Which is going to be pretty great. And, of course, the loser of the Fight Night will take home the $20. And it rounds out a nice $100 a week that Hitbox has been sponsoring. And there were some Fight Nights before this, but they've been re-energized by Hitbox TV. And, of course, you guys can create an account. Like Droopy was saying, you don't even have to necessarily bother with verification, although you can verify your email just fine. And then, of course, you can do things like post GIFs in the chat if you're a mod. But if you're not a mod, you can look at all the cool GIFs that have been posted in chat, and you can even call them GIFs if you want.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool features here that you won't see anywhere else, at least not yet. And if you're watching this from Team Liquid, just come on over to hitbox.tv slash
Jump
Team
over.
Gravity, and you will not regret it. Simple process for a lot of reward.
Indeed. And game number 3, going to be Intense's choice of map. We're heading to Nimbus for our next match. And both of these players are, of course, going to be wanting to gain back that momentum and get themselves into that match point position.
Absolutely. So Nimbus, it was chosen by Intense because Intense was the loser of the previous match. And I'm not surprised at all by this selection. Nimbus has a reputation for being a very Terran-favored map for a variety of reasons. And given that he's a Terran here, this is a good choice, I'd have to say. He's looking to take advantage of this situation.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, lots of players of all race, depending on how this map ends up working out, but lots of players of all races really hate the kind of relationship between that natural and the potential 4th base. But let's go ahead and intro these players.
All right, so we are going to be looking at the person who chose this map. He is going to be responsible for the venue right now. It's going to be the Red Terran on the bottom left-hand side of Nimbus LE, the representative from Psystorm Gaming. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Intense.
And in the cross position, the top right, the blue Zerg from Flipside Tactics. He just evened the score 1-1. It is JonSnow. With a lovely smile on his intro card.
All right, so on Nimbus LE, pretty big map, 4 possible spawning locations for the 2 players. So there's going to be a little bit of scouting going on, and just to make sure you kind of zero in on where your opponent is. You got the first Overlord heading out here from JonSnow. And a lot of times on Nimbus LE, you're going to see players play pretty greedy to open up. Last game we did, well, I would have to say that Intense has been playing pretty greedy most of these games, going for the 5-minute or so 3rd CC. Let's see what JonSnow does here. Last game, he skipped the gas, got the 3rd a little sooner. Will he get his 3rd even sooner this time? Let's find out.
He could very well. Of course, with that in-base natural expansion, it does lead to that greedy play like you talked about. Now, Intense, it looks like he's going to be opening up pretty much the same way that he has in virtually all 3 of these games. Maybe a couple of differences here and there, but they're really quite minor up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing Reaper expansions out of Intense. Looks like he's going to go with a Reaper once more. And, you know, a Reaper is always really a solid choice here for Terran, because that Reaper allows you to do scouting. Whatever you can kill is just basically cherry on the top. But it does, of course, lead to a slightly slower expansion. Sometimes Terrans will go for that CC first here on Nimbus. And that wouldn't have been necessarily a bad choice from Intense. But I think given that there's 3 locations that he needs to scout for JonSnow, he's going to go for the Reaper instead.
Yep, and that Reaper is now going to be making its way across the map. Of course, JonSnow, he's going to have a pretty good idea of where Intense did spawn. And Intense going to be heading his way across the map. He did see that Overlord, I believe, but he's going to be kind of checking this base out, and then he's going to immediately head up north, and that's where he's finally going to get eyes on his opponent for the first time as the CC drops in the natural of Intense.
Yeah, we're already seeing that factory transition here for the Terran player. Now, last couple games, he's gone for that 3rd CC at around this time. Let's see if he's going to go forward with that. He's got a low amount of minerals, so he already did built it. No, that's actually the natural. My bad. So hasn't actually put down a 3rd CC yet.
Not quite just yet. Now, the one thing that he has done is moved in with this Reaper and tried to get some of those drone kills. I believe in both of our first games, he did manage to get himself a couple of drone kills. This one, he might not be able to get any drone kills as the Queens are going to be poking away at that Reaper, forcing it back. But he's following it up just like on the Overgrowth game with that reactor into some Marine production for that way. And then looks like it's going to be into that double Hellion production. Maybe he'll follow it up with a relatively quick armory like we ended up seeing in the previous game as well.
And this is a much tougher map for Reapers to do damage. I mean, for the most part, you're expecting the Reaper to just do scouting here, and even if that, because of that natural being in the back, because of the fact that in front of the main, you really have a small ramp and not a lot of ledge area for your Reapers to hop up and down. Pretty much a Queen can cover up most of that area. So with that scout done by Intense, he's ready to bring the Reaper on home.
Yep, and just committing to that one Reaper. No fancy shenanigans, nothing like that going to be happening. He is going to be going for the Widow Mine and the Hellion, so it's not double Hellion for the follow-up. He did go 2 Hellions first. But yeah, he's just going to be continuing on with that Widow Mine. But the third base of JonSnow getting thrown down. But potentially even more interesting is in the main base, that Baneling Nest.
Yeah, JonSnow has his speed researched. He's looking to add on the explosive power to those lings as well. And that means he may be looking to make what I should say an aggressive timing push. Bane Bust, perhaps.
It could be a Bane Bust for sure. And he's adding on 10 more lings. Now, Intense does have a drop moving out. That is going to be a number of Marines and 1 Widow Mine. So it's not going to be the 8 Marine drop like we saw in the previous games.
Yes, and one thing that is different from the previous 2 games is Intense has not taken a third, so he wants to do damage with the attack that he's making now, but he may actually need to defend here very soon because JonSnow is readying up these lings in the corner. But in the meantime, he has to deal with this drop in the natural, and, well, it looks like Intense has forced those drones off. Pretty frustrating situation for JonSnow.
Yep, and of course with this Widow Mine, he's going to be able to defend. It does splash the medevac a little bit there, which is annoying for Intense. He manages to escape with only 3 Marines. However, on the left side, the Hellion's starting to eat away at the lings, and another Reaper may go down. No, the Reaper does survive. Just a couple of hit points there. He's shaking in his boots. He's almost dead, but the Banelings have morphed. They're waddling their way to the front of Intense, and here could be that bust that you talked about a little while ago, and the follow-up is going to be Lings, but they're getting distracted with the Hellions. They actually get a nice surround on the Hellions in the middle of the map, but the Marines still stand strong. They get picked up by the medevac, and the Banelings busting through the front. They're going to be looking to get through right into the main base of Intense.
All right, those Banelings trying to head for those SCVs. They're going to get a few of them, but Intense splitting them very well here. And these Banelings still trying to look for the amazing connect they need. This one might be it. There's another 5 SCVs dying, and that's just a little too much for Intense to take.
It was perhaps a little bit too intense for him, and the Ling Flood follow-up, even if he didn't GG out at that point, probably would have just trashed him because JonSnow was following up with like 24 more Lings just to thread through.
You know what? I was telling myself, okay, don't make an intense punt. Don't make an intense punt. Don't make an intense punt. But you did it.
I went for it.
All right there. But you know what? One thing about that attack from Intense, the Hellion run by on the third, the drop in the natural, actually didn't do much damage. Just looking at the number of workers killed there, it was actually a big fat 0 for Intense. And mostly what he did was delay the mining a bit. And whatever worker advantage Intense had after that was mainly because JonSnow had stopped worker production to go ahead with that Bane Bust. And it was a good play. You know, the funny thing was I mentioned before the game that Nimbus was a map where people play greedy on. These 2 guys did the exact opposite.
Yep. JonSnow did go for that third, and he potentially was looking to add that on. But yeah, it was not anything crazy greedy like that 3 hatch before pool. Nothing like that. So we'll have to see how they end up playing it out on Deadwing, which is going to be Intense's map choice. And JonSnow taking that 2nd map in a row. He could, of course, go for a 3-map kill for a 3-1 victory score. But I'm getting ahead of myself, as now JonSnow is at that match point, of course. And we'll have to see how that affects Intense. He hasn't been doing anything crazy cheesy, so it's not like he cheesed out the first couple of games and is now on the edge of defeat. But maybe he plays things even a little bit more safe, although he's been playing it plenty safe so far.
Yeah, you know, I think in that previous game just now, with Intense picking a map that is generally Terran favored, I think that might have been the reason why JonSnow decided to do the Bane Bust. He just didn't want to get into a mid-late game scenario where he's dealing with all these drops, with bases that's very hard to maneuver between. And so he just went for basically the all-in, and Intense didn't quite recognize that in time. So
Yeah, that's a good point. A very good point indeed. And as we head into the next map, Deadwing, things are definitely getting tense for these two guys, but I'm really curious as to how they decide to open.
Yep, and we're going to see actually the Purple Zerg open up here at the upper left-hand side. He has been able to just really bring things back here for him in this matchup. Starting down 0-1, winning 2 in a row, and now, well, it's his series to lose, guys. This is match point. So we do have here the Purple Zerg representing Flipside Tactics, guys. It is JonSnow.
And just south of him in the bottom left corner from Storm Gaming, the Red Terran player, he needs your cheers. It is Intense.
You say he needs people's cheers. Judging by the poll, he kind of does. The poll is so lopsided in favor of JonSnow. Now, right now, it's 2-1 with JonSnow in the lead, but I have to say these games have been really close, save for the last one. But the first 2 games, really close, really long macro games. I think it's actually a lot tougher to sort of decide who has the upper hand here in this matchup than the poll would suggest.
Yeah, especially with the way that first game ended up going. Like you were talking about, these games have been very close, and maybe if people were just tuning into the third one, they'd be like, JonSnow is going to sweep this noob. JonSnow is going to wipe the floor with him. But if you guys just tuned in, well, thank you for tuning in, but you missed some epic games on number 1 and number 2. Catalina was a fantastic match to start us off, and yeah, it's definitely not as one-sided as the poll is predicting like you were talking about.
And if you missed those games, guys, don't forget there are always going to be VODs of these games posted on hitbox.tv. In fact, you can see some of the ones of the previous fight nights by clicking on that tab of videos for this very channel. And you can see some of the fight nights that through the last 3 we had. I think last week's was Gumiho versus Fantasy. That was the headliner. We've also had, I don't even remember, so many good players. It's all the same after a while. But yeah,
but tonight, tonight we have some very good headliner players as well in the form of Masa and Violet. But we don't want to detract too much from this particular game because these guys, they may not be quote-unquote headliners, but they are very good indeed.
Yeah, and looks like right now JonSnow is going to be making a spawning pool after the hatchery. But no gas once more. So he is going to open up gasless, I would have to say. And we'll see if Intense will maybe change his strat up a bit. Last game was the only game he did not go for a third CC at around 5 minutes. And that didn't work out so well for him. So let's see if that will change here.
Yeah, he might start to mix things up. Really, the biggest difference between this game and, say, game number 2 or game number 3 is so far it's looking pretty similar for Intense, but he is going to be keeping that Reaper at home. And considering how big this map is, he's just planting the Reaper right in the middle of his main base ramp. Now, there are 4 lings out on the map for JonSnow, and Intense is actually going to be seeing them pretty much right as he moves out with his Reaper. But they almost get a complete surround there, bringing that Reaper down incredibly low on HP.
Yeah, but the Reapers are just so slippery. They're going to sneak out of a 4-ling surround so quickly. And it's already healing as I speak. And in the meantime, we're going to have JonSnow sneak a ling here into the base of Intense. Going to find that the CC is finished on the low ground. Finished being the key word, so the ling can't harass the SCV.
He's going to go for that SCV harass anyways. It's not quite as effective as when the SCV is actually building the CC, like you were talking about.
Yes, and well, looks like JonSnow gonna continue working on this gasless opener here. Gonna take the 2 extractors on the low ground and just start bringing up that queen count. It looks like. On the other hand, for Intense, not seeing a 3rd command center just yet. He may look to be aggressive again this game. Let's see if it'll pay off for him.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he's going for the same sort of Banshee opener that he went for in the first game. Instead, he's just going for that medevac. But we do have the Roach Warren and Speed just starting for JonSnow. as he adds on a couple of more drones. Nothing too crazy just yet.
So this is interesting. We're seeing Roach and Bane right now. No third hatchery just yet. It's already 647. So I think JonSnow is looking to be aggressive here himself. It's funny because on the two maps where the players are supposed to play the greediest, it's almost like these two players have decided to do the exact opposite. And that could the reason for that could be, a little bit of metagaming. Like, okay, I expect my opponent here to play greedy, take a quick third, so I'm going to punish him by doing a 2-base timing attack. So both these guys are, again, looking to do just that.
Quite possibly, yeah. And as Intense moves out, he's got a nice medevac, almost full of Marines. It's not quite that 8 Marines, but it's pretty close. And Hellions adding on a little bit of DPS coming up behind this. He's going to be seeing, oh, there is no third base here. It's not even started. It is nowhere to be seen. I mean, there's not even a drone on the way down to build a third base. He's going to fly into the main base. He looks like he will be seeing those roaches. And Intense is potentially going to be a little bit worried.
Yeah, I would have to say him moving in with these Hellbats right now, not sure if this is the best move for him. It's not going to be easy for him to get much done in that natural. Maybe it might be safer for him. Take a third base like he's doing right now and just defend a little bit. Terrans have a great opportunity to defend on a map like Deadwing with very limited choke points, but he is going to lose those Hellbats down here. That's not a good look for Intense.
No, yeah. He definitely needs those units to play defensive. And he's only got 3 Marines left over from his, 6 or 7 that he originally sent in the main base. He is going to be redropping them, which will force every drone away, and he doesn't get a single drone kill on those units as they pull away. A couple of Lings going to be coming forward to deal with that, but there's Roach Ling heading down the middle of the map. It will be exactly spotted by the Viking, and he also sees the Banelings as they're forming.
Yeah, I think Intense was really crossing his fingers, hoping that 3 Marine drop could get JonSnow to delay this attack, but he's not falling for it. We're going to see the Roaches actually bust down the bunker. Not even the Banelings needed for this maneuver, and Intense is staring down the barrel of the gun right now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's staring down the barrel of that gun with pretty much only Hellions and a Banshee. Now, maybe if these all form into Hellbats, he might have a shot at tailing with this, but he really just needs more units that he doesn't have.
Yeah, that Banshee's going to do a lot of work, but is it going to do it in time? Because now the SCVs are having to be pulled here, and that could lead to a lot of worker kills. JonSnow, trying to make these Roaches do as much damage as he can, is trying to kite those Hellions. Hellfire missiles raining down. I think Intense can hold, but the damage is going to be costly.
Yeah. Everyone does like to talk about 3 orbital Terran and their mule drops, but we'll see exactly if that's enough to bring Intense back into this game, as he still has to deal with these Roaches in his main base. I mean, yeah, Banshees are great at shooting down, but they just take so long to kill any of these Roaches.
Yeah, and we do have a few more Lings streaming in here. Man. Oh, this factory, if it gets taken out, is going to be huge for JonSnow, but it looks like he's not going to stick around because he knows the Hellbats are still up. And the Lings, though, still going to stay annoying as long as they can.
Yep, they're just trying to get the surround on the Hellbats. They'll pick off an additional Hellbat. Now, it looks like the Ling Flood has mostly stopped for JonSnow. He's adding on upgrades. He's adding on more drones. Also going to be taking himself a bit of a layer in his main base. But the aggression has stopped. Intense does have 3 Banshees, and these, if they find a good opening, especially with Cloak on the way and a 4th Banshee, if they find a good opening, they could do some serious damage to JonSnow's economy.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a good play because JonSnow has been focusing on transitioning. Now, Intense knows this even without seeing because, well, the attack stopped. I mean, he's not seeing reinforcements stream in like crazy. So he knows that JonSnow's focusing on transitioning. He may not have the units he needs to deal with these Banshees. So Intense is going to have to claw back into the game by making magic with these guys.
Yep, unfortunately for Intense, even if he had Cloak ready, the Overseer is right there going to be spotting those Banshees, and the 3 Queens will be able to push it away. Now, the Banshees are swinging over to that 3rd base location. The Spore Crawler is there. It's maybe not in the perfect position to completely protect all of these drones, as they do get sniped down. Quite a few of them getting eliminated there. But JonSnow, he's got some breathing room. He did such incredible damage to Intense early on. He can tank a little bit of damage himself.
Yeah, you want to talk about the damage he did. It was to the tune of 23 workers killed. And Intense still doesn't have a third base taken. Now he's facing another attack on the bottom. He does hold that off, though, with his Hellbats and Lings. Not quite enough to break through by any means. So Intense will be stabilizing for now. And he's brought his SCV count back up to 50 here. So it's actually not too far behind that of JonSnow, surprisingly enough. He has been pumping SCVs off of these 3 command centers. The third one, of course, hasn't taken a base yet, but it has been a macro command center of sorts, and that's allowed him to actually be competitive in the worker count, surprisingly.
Yeah. Now, if we look up at the top of the map, there is the Roach Warren getting targeted down by these Banshees, and the Banshees may have found just a sweet spot to hit this Roach Warren. They might actually be able to snipe it down before the Spore Crawler actually finishes burrowing. Now, they need to get the hell out of dodge as they do pull back there. The Roach Warren completely eliminated, but this Overseer is here to spot for the Mutas.
Yeah, I mean, taking out that Roach Warren was a moral victory more than anything, because Intense now knows there's the Muta transition. JonSnow doesn't even care about Roaches anymore right now. It's going to be full-on Muta, Ling, and Bane, and Intense is going to have to try to prepare for this one on the bottom.
Yep. Unfortunately for Intense, he maybe doesn't have quite the unit numbers, but he does have the missile turret numbers, and that's going to be quite nice for him. Of course, these Hellbats not going to be too useful against the Mutalisks. We'll see exactly how JonSnow decides to move in here, because if he's able to snipe off some of these Hellbats, he might be able to swing in with Lings and finish off everything else.
Right now, let's see what the upgrade counts are. This is going to be very pivotal in determining the upcoming battle as far as who has the advantage. 1-1's done for JonSnow. Intense does not quite have his 1-1 finished, and in fact, well, they're actually relatively close. So JonSnow does have the advantage for the time being. He's already working on 2-2. And right now, the Mutas are looking for an opportunity to fly into that third. Let's see if they can target anything down. But with 2 turrets, won't be easy.
Yeah, the other advantage that Intense potentially will have is if he's able to get some really nice Widowmine shots off. He does currently have 4 Widowmines with his army just kind of tagging along. And we all know those Widowmine shots that make everyone yell, Widowmines need to be nerfed. And maybe we'll see some of those tonight, just some really crazy good shots. But for now, the Mutalisks do pull away, and we will have to worry about that later.
You know what's funny is you say that we all know about Widowmines being so awesome, but I almost was wondering if Intense knew that, because we haven't seen him make Widowmines at all so far in this matchup. And remember in that game 2, in fact, in Game 2, all he did was make tanks. He used tanks, actually, to serve as the splash damage and not Widowmines, which I actually did find was a curious choice. But now he's going to go with Widowmines because they are cheaper and probably better for him, as he did suffer the early losses on. Are they going to be able to work wonders for him here? The Banelings rolling in to set those off first. Now the rest are going to close in on those splitted Marines. And I think JonSnow has a numbers advantage right now. What the Banelings are continuing to chase. Will they be able to force those liftoffs? They will. The Mutas will be able to chase down the medevacs.
Yeah, that was a quote-unquote nice pickup by Intense, but the Ignite Afterburners was not cooled down, and now the only medevac that's able to escape is the one with no units. Even the Banshee gets pushed away from that 4th base location. It's not really